Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk from the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. Today, the 23rd day of the month of healing, the month of ER 5776. It's also May 31st, 2016, some people say. And this Shabbat, we begin a new book of the Torah in Israel's history, the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, here in the land of Israel, that is. And, of course, today is the 38th day of the counting of the Omer, and this Shabbat is also the Sabbath of the blessing of the new moon of Sivan. New moon Rosh Chodesh will occur next week on Monday night and Tuesday, the 7th of June, and of course that means that we will just be 6 days away from the festival of Shavuot, Zman Matan Toratenu, the anniversary of the giving of the Torah at Sinai. But first, next week on Saturday night, on Sunday, next week, Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, that will be commemorating 49 years since the liberation of Jerusalem on the 28th day of the month of ER. 49 years ago, Jerusalem was unified and liberated. So it's 1,946 years since the destruction of our Holy Temple, 68 years from the establishment of the State of Israel, and 49 years from the liberation of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem Day, you know, it's a very, very emotive, inspiring day. Very, very special to think about the significance of the unification of Jerusalem in our time. And this morning, Yitzchak, I was fortunate enough to be on the Temple Mount. And due to circumstances beyond my control, I had not been able to go up for a little while. I was up today, and I have to tell you that, you know, as smooth as things can go, and as moved and grateful that we are to be able to be there, and it is just such an incredibly potent and powerful experience to be there in that total portal, to know that you are in the presence of the Shekhinah, the most important place on earth, the place where prayer, every moment of it is so precious and really counts. I have to tell you that it is not an easy experience under the best of circumstances. And honestly, the way the Jewish people are treated on the Temple Mount would make anyone just stop and wonder and just absolutely dumbfounded at how this could be going on in the state of Israel. The way Jews are treated, the phalanx, is that the word? P-H-A-L-A-N. The phalanx, the cordon, the group, phalanx, of guards, of the Waqf Muslim Jordanian guards who so scrupulously and carefully look at the lips and eyes and movement of every Jew, the oppressive, stifling.
You think they go through special training? What to look for?
Strangulation that they put over you. So the 1-2 punch of the police, who ostensibly are there to protect you, but who unfortunately work hand in glove with the Waqf, and the Waqf, who are so oppressive and overbearing in their tremendously invasive tactics, really succeed in making you feel totally unwelcome, totally second class, totally all the things that they believe that we are. And reflecting on the upcoming anniversary of the liberation of Jerusalem, and reflecting on conversations that we have had with our own Rabbi Ariel, who, as the founder of the Temple Institutes, is how we know him today, but mustn't forget that he was one of the young paratroopers, a full 49 years ago, who participated in the battle for the liberation of Jerusalem, in which 180 of his comrades fell. And talking about what the Jewish people went through and what the IDF went through to liberate the Temple Mount, and then to have done this, to have put ourselves in this situation where we are quite clearly considered as the most unwelcome guests that could possibly be. And certainly not the sovereign nation who rules over the place. It's just absolutely mind-boggling to me. So here's how I'm looking at it, okay? If you'll just
bear with you.
Bear with me, right, for a moment. This week, Parashat Bamidbar, we begin the book of Numbers, and we will begin to learn about this amazing, contradictory, undefinable, unparalleled, holy generation, the generation of the desert. And this particular parsha basically begins where the book of Exodus left off, right? We had kind of like a break with the book of Vayikra, the manual for, as it were, ministering to the divine presence. And now we begin the book of Numbers. And the whole book of Numbers is very, you know what, Yitzchak, if I had to capture a feeling of this parsha, that is, the first Torah portion of the book of Numbers, if I had to capsulize it in one word, I decided that word would be familial. Okay. Because the whole Torah portion is about it's a very intimate portrait of the family of Israel. It might have gotten to be a big family, Kanahara, but it's about the census in the wilderness. It's about all the different tribes and their heads. It's about how they camped with the formation of Judah to the east, and Reuven to the south, and Ephraim to the west, and Dan to the north, and how they were all camped around the tabernacle with their banners, with their flags. And it talks about the family of Moshe and Aaron. It talks about the Levites. It talks about the purpose of the Levites. It talks about all the families of the Levites. It talks about the responsibilities of the family of Kahat. It talks about the responsibilities of the family of Gershon and Merari. And that's the whole parsha. And it is amazing. Very, very specific in that way. So, one of the major characteristics of Jerusalem Day and how it's observed, how it's celebrated, and how it's manifest in our time is the preponderance of flags. Even more so than on Independence Day, you have a very strong feeling of this deep surge of nationalistic feeling. On Jerusalem Day, because we have the cream of the Israeli youth that converge on Jerusalem and march through the streets, singing and dancing and carrying the flag of the nation of Israel, and converging in the Old City, converging at the Western Wall. Wish they would be converging on the Temple Mount, but that doesn't seem to be possible at the moment, according to the authorities, so they converge on the Western Wall. And there's this huge attention being paid to the flag, and I've always found that to be very apropos and very deeply connected to the fact that it usually comes out around Parashat Bamidbar, and one of the overwhelming features of the encampment of Israel in the desert is the flags of the tribes. And I think that in this week's Torah lesson, our video lesson, we're going to be going in a little deeper, and we have in the past, and the whole concept of the flags of the tribes of Israel in the desert. And we know that this was divinely inspired by the vision of the angels who descended on Har Sinai at the giving of the Torah, also with flags, whatever that means according to that homiletical teaching. But the flag is the symbol. The flag is the symbol of the nation. The flag was the symbol of the tribes in the desert, the family of Israel. And again, the flags of the tribes in the desert around the tabernacle, each tribe with their own ensign, their own banner, has a hugely, deeply psychological and mystical and spiritual and practical significance, the whole teaching. But these flags are in here, how beautiful it is that at this season, at the time of Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, and Yom Yerushalayim, especially Jerusalem Day, here in the month of Iyar, we have the presence in our land of more flags than ever, right? People displaying this flag, which of course, like I say, is the national symbol. So where am I going with this is very, very simple. Okay, told you before we started today that I'm annoyed. I'm
Yes.
annoyed, and I wanted to talk to you about why I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed because of an article that I'm reading that appeared a couple of days ago, wherein the president of Israel, Rivlin, who, by the way, himself is nothing but a symbol, honestly, because the presidency of Israel is basically a figurehead position, right? So at some meeting, the president of Israel, this is the statement, this is the headline of the article, Rivlin, rethink national symbols and anthem to be more inclusive for Arabs. The president says Arab Israelis can't be expected to sing about a Jewish spirit yearning, paraphrasing Hatikvah, the national anthem of Israel, hoping that every citizen will one day be able to identify with the state. Let me read you this article, Yitzchak, okay?
Yeah.
Let me take a chance here.
Yeah.
Let me go out on a limb and read you this article. Israeli President Reuven suggested on Sunday that Israel might consider revising its national symbols and its anthem, Hatikvah, to make it more inclusive to its Arab community, which makes up over 20% of the population. Speaking to Arab and Jewish students on Sunday at Jerusalem's Himmelfarb High School, Rivlin said, and I quote, he can't expect loyal Israeli citizens who are not Jewish to say that they have a Jewish spirit yearning, as the lyric goes, because they are not Jewish. And maybe their spirit is yearning for their country, but not as part of the Jewish people because they are not part of the Jewish people. Rivlin was responding to a question by an Arab student who asked if it was possible to change or add anything to the symbols of the state so that Arab citizens can identify with it and feel a part of the country. Accompanied by Education Minister Naftali Bennett and Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat, Rivlin said, and I quote, "This dilemma must be solved by Israeli leaders, one of whom is sitting right next to me," in reference to Bennett. The question you are asking needs to be on the national agenda in the next generation or two. This is a dilemma we can't ignore. It needs to be addressed by leaders, by members of Knesset who were chosen by the people, Rivlin urged. At this point, where we have to base the existence of the state of Israel on a Jewish state, and a democratic one, we have to hold on to and strengthen the Zionist dream, which comes often causing friction with those citizens who are not Zionists, he said. I await the day that every Israeli citizen can identify with the state of Israel and not just the deep, important idea of the 2,000-year-old quest of the Jewish people to return to their homeland, he added. Last year, Rivlin said he understands why Israel's Arab citizens feel uncomfortable with the national anthem and maintained that they should not be forced to sing it. I am very touched every time I sing Hatikvah, but I know that my Arab friend doesn't have a Jewish spirit yearning deep at the heart, Rivlin told students, quoting from the lyrics. I must continue to insist on singing my anthem whenever I wish, but I don't need to force anyone to sing those words, he added. End of article. You know what? I think that this is just absolutely insane, this whole thing. And I'll just say that once upon a time, there was a great man, Rabbi Meir Kahana, who was killed for his beliefs. And he used to say that if a person can't sing the national anthem of the country that they're in, maybe they shouldn't be there, because this is the national anthem of the country. Mm-hmm. So here you have this article, where basically he's saying a number of things that I think are totally contradictory. And I say all this on the background of the quickly approaching Jerusalem Day, and the price that we pay for Jerusalem, and the hope, the vision of what Jerusalem is supposed to be, expressed by Torah. So here he's saying he can't expect loyal Israeli citizens who are not Jewish to say that they have a Jewish spirit yearning, because they're not Jewish. Maybe their spirit is yearning for their country, but not as part of the Jewish people. How does that work exactly? Is that what we've seen? Is that a phenomena that we experience very much? That there are loyal citizens to Israel that are not Jewish, and they're still yearning, and they still want to be part of this country, but they're not part of the Jewish people. And so he says, yeah, it could very well be that we have to think about changing the symbols, changing the flag, changing the national anthem. This has to be addressed by people. Because right now the state of Israel is based on the idea of a Jewish state, and a democratic one at that. And we have to strengthen the Zionist dream, but after all, how is this going to work? What do you have to say about this, Yitzchak? How do I understand this? Oh, wait, let me just say one more thing, okay? Let me just say one more thing. There's something I wanted to comment on a few weeks ago, and it slipped my mind at the time. It was a small piece that after a couple of days gained more momentum, and it was about how Michigan Public Radio had a program, and a woman called into this program, Michigan Public Radio. So on this particular program, I guess, or maybe it's every day, a caller can sponsor a program or a day's broadcast, and if they do that, then they are entitled to make some sort of a wish or some sort of an announcement or some sort of a greeting or something like that. And her whole thing, this donor to Michigan Public Radio, was she wanted to say happy birthday to the state of Israel because it was Independence Day celebrating 68 years. And the radio declined and said that it cannot get involved in something that is controversial and that is the subject of intense debate, and they can't cause people to be uncomfortable, so they can't wish the state of Israel a happy birthday, okay? You know what? That story is very, very minuscule in the sea of so many stories about what's going on, about the lies that are being perpetrated, about Israel killing Palestinian children, and all the absolute crap that is out there in the whole BDS thing, which, by the way, is really starting to lose. That they're starting to lose that battle, and it's starting. There's legislation being passed in state after state and country after country that is illegalizing BDS, which is wonderful. But the point is, you have this tremendous loam of hatred and resentment seething amongst these nations of the world, right? Michigan Public Radio can't wish the state of Israel a happy birthday. Can you imagine not being able to wish someone a happy 4th of July? Can you imagine that becoming controversial? I don't know, maybe in England they're still very, very sensitive about America having, beat them in 1776. Maybe it shouldn't be brought up, that and sea power. Maybe they shouldn't bring that up and insult the English, but nobody ever says you can't say Happy Independence Day in America. But here, you can't wish Israel. So what do I want to say, Yitzchak?
Yeah.
What I want to say is all this comes from the fact that we ourselves broadcast this tremendous ambivalence, insecurity, lack of confidence in the righteousness of our own path, right? Lieberman gets appointed as the Minister of Defense. Big political fallout, big political earthquake here in Israel. What's the first thing that he comes along and says? He says, "Don't worry, I am in favor of the two-state solution."
Yeah.
The two-state solution is more heinous, more insidious and invidious, more profane and obscene than the golden calf, and than any other sin that you can think of, past, present, or future. The two-state solution goes against everything that the God of Israel intended for this land. Prime Minister Netanyahu now is starting to make peeps and say that he is considering the Arab Peace Initiative. He says it's 13 years old, it has to be refreshed and revitalized, but yes. And don't forget that we are predicated, he says, on the two-state solution. The two-state solution is the antithesis of what it means to be a Jew and what the land of Israel means for the Jewish people and what the Torah designates the land of Israel for. And again, you can't dance at two weddings. You can't be halfway in and halfway out. So either you say, this is real, this is not a dream, this is who we are, or you don't. And as soon as you don't, in that space of your insecurity, in that space of your lack of integrity and courage and faith, in that space, you create the possibility of Michigan Public Radio saying, no, we can't wish the state of Israel a happy birthday, but that's nothing. You create the possibility for the venom, the lies, the UN resolutions, the terrific, horrible campaign being waged against Israel by so many nations. You create it when you have a president that says, well, if we have Arab citizens who are loyal to the state of Israel and they can't sing Hatikvah because they're uncomfortable talking about this, the nefesh, the spirit of a Jewish people yearning to be a Jew in his homeland, that's a very big problem. He says, we're going to have to change that. We're going to have to change that. Maybe they should change the flag also. Or you could say, like Rav Kahana used to say, what's going on here? This is our only country. We came home. We have nothing to apologize for. This is where we belong. How could we possibly consider other people over ourselves. This is our land. If they're not comfortable with it, then that equation must mean that there's something wrong with their being here, and it must not be for them. And until we get real and have the audacity to admit that and to be confident in the righteousness of our own path, then why did 23,000 soldiers die? Why did 180 soldiers die just for Jerusalem? What is it all about? What are we doing here if it's not real? And so Parashat Bamidbar, we're all poised and ready now to go into the land. And I will go on and on now for the next few weeks in this book about the inscrutable nature of that generation, and how we will identify with that and try and make the tikkun of being ready to go into the land of Israel and soon to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. There's a root canal that has to be done here in the most serious way. Am I the only person that's? Am I out of the ballpark here, Yitzchak? Am I doing something wrong? Are you embarrassed to have me on the radio with you? Am I a racist? Have I done something? Have I overstepped my bounds by saying that I'm annoyed with this article where the president of Israel says, well, if the Arabs are not comfortable with our flag and our national anthem, then maybe it should be changed. Is there something wrong with me, or is there something wrong with this picture?
Yep, changing the flag, changing the symbols, changing the anthem is the same thing exactly as giving away land. All these gestures which so supposedly will make us more loved and show our sincerity and our integrity have the exact opposite effect. The Arabs pocket what we've given them and demand more. In the meantime, we are eating away at our own souls by even contemplating these things. And when it comes from the president, it's particularly discouraging and disgusting. That's what I have to say about that, Rabbi.
I appreciate that, Yitzchak, because after all, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope from even considering such a thing as there being a problem with the national anthem. The slope quickly falls down to the precipice of the two-state solution, which unfortunately they're also talking about. So let's get ready for receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai in another week or so, 2 weeks, less at Mount Sinai on the festival of Shavuot, and let's redouble our efforts to be serious about our obligations to our nation, to the land, and to this world. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. Today is the 23rd day of the month of ER 5776, 31st day of May 2016, and it's the 38th day of the counting of the Omer. This is Yitzchak Reuven, and with me in the studio, Rabbi Richman here from the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. And I'm sure you're all still following every day the Rabbi's counting of the Omer, which, you know, every day there's a new fascinating lesson, and you can count them and collect them all. Altogether, you know, each message is about a minute long. So when it's all done, you know, 49 minutes of beautiful Torah teaching and beautiful, it's like a class working on one's own attributes, on self-improvement in a modest and earnest way. Rabbi, Parashat and Sefer Bamidbar, which means literally in the desert, even though in English we refer to the book as Numbers because of the census which takes place at the opening of the book. And we begin reading Bamidbar/Numbers this week here in the land of Israel. In the diaspora, still 1 week behind us, and I think will be 1 week behind us all through the entire reading of the book of Bamidbar. I think the gap only gets closed
when they're
at the very end.
Going to catch up,
which I think is really inexcusable.
The 2nd of Av, which is August 6th, we're going to be finishing the book of Numbers together.
Okay.
That Torah
so
portion.
yeah, bear with us, because for the next number of weeks, we will be one Parashat ahead of our brethren in the diaspora. But Bamidbar, one thing that always strikes me about Bamidbar and about what you mentioned earlier, the description of the encampment around the tabernacle, and the first level or circle of encampment are the Levites, whose job is to not merely assemble and disassemble and transport the tabernacle, but to protect it physically with their bodies by encamping around it. And then on the outer perimeter of the Levites are the 12 tribes, 4 to the north, 4 to the south, 4 to the west, and 4 to the east. But what always strikes me is that this commandment to create an army and create a defensive I know there's military words that I should be using, and they're just escaping me. A defensive arrangement.
Phalanx?
For the encampments. It all comes not when they first left Egypt, which you would think, the first thing you do when you're on your own now, you're a nation, you're big boys now, you're a people, so you make an army, defend yourselves. And it wasn't like Israel wasn't attacked, and it wasn't like Israel didn't have to defend itself. Israel did soon after leaving Egypt. But what strikes me is that the military encampments are not created until the tabernacle has been completed and the avodah, the service of the tabernacle has begun. Meaning that the heart of the nation has been created and has been the beating of the heart has started, and it's not till then that God commands Israel to create a defensive line, and that is that Israel now has something to defend, and that the purpose of being a nation isn't merely to defend oneself and to survive in that difficult, cruel, wicked world, but to create an environment in which God's presence can exist and spread forth, and to lay our lives on the line for the defense of that, because that is what gives our nation a life, and that's what gives our nation a purpose, and that is the raison d'etre for our nation. And that's what I find fascinating.
And Israel is God's army in this world for the honor of the Shekhinah, and this is really what I was getting at when I was ranting about Rivlin and the whole idea of changing the flag or changing the anthem. Because you can say, like, what's the big deal, But it's not about a symbol. And that's the whole problem, is that for them it's only a symbol.
Right.
So, like, okay, you're not happy with it, but when you have such an attitude about the land, and that attitude that they have comes from, the secular leadership comes from a lack of faith, and a lack of vision, and a lack of being convinced, obviously, in what it is that we're supposed to be doing here. So therefore, it's not an issue of the symbol at all. It's an issue of what the flag, exactly as you beautifully pointed out, the flags of the encampment in the Midbar, what it represents. It represents the willingness, the readiness, the fortitude, the commitment of the Jewish people around the tabernacle and their purpose in life. That's exactly what it's all about. We're going to be going into that, as I mentioned, very deeply this week in our video lesson about the Torah portion, and everything about the attitude that the president was conveying, the idea of being able to, opt for a better deal that will make everybody happy. We just want to make everybody happy. We want to make everybody happy. You be happy with the flag, please. You be happy with the anthem, please.
The misunderstanding is...
And that being connected to the willingness to consider an Arab peace initiative or the two-state solution, God forbid, and Lieberman getting up there and saying, yeah, I'll destroy my own house. I'll destroy settlements. The two-state solution is the way to go. All this is one total package deal. It's a spiritual bankruptcy that comes from a lack of understanding.
It's the misunderstanding is that they think that we're doing this all for ourselves, and if it's all for ourselves, then what do we care about symbols, and what do we care if the song says this or if the flag shows that? And it also is the same attitude and gross misunderstanding that creates this argument that the life of the enemy is every bit as precious and valuable as the life of our soldiers, and sometimes we have to sacrifice our soldiers' lives to save another life that's
everything here is topsy-turvy, and then when there are attacks against Jews in other countries, when there is rampant anti-Semitism, when there's all these lies that are being perpetrated about Israel, when there are all these efforts that are being made to demonize and dismantle and delegitimize Israel, and then when there are attacks also within, and when there are, when there's terror, you don't hear about it, thank God. Yesterday, indeed, a soldier was stabbed in Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. That was the first time in a while, but on the other hand, today I read that there were 3 separate stoning incidences against the Jerusalem light rail. This is going on all the time, this kind of terror attack, and it's just a miracle that people are not killed. And there are horrible things that go on every day, but the point is, you complain about it, but you actually empower it. And you resonate and radiate and broadcast this. It's not just a weakness. It's a message that I myself actually don't feel that I belong to be. I belong. And you know what? All this was going through my mind in the deepest way on the Temple Mount this morning. It's all emanating from there. If you could see the total lack of respect, the total impotency that we have foisted upon ourselves in the eyes of the Arabs by the way we allow them to basically treat us like sheep to the slaughter on the Temple Mount.
When you take a God of Israel out of the equation, then there's nothing left. There is no reason.
There is no
purpose.
That is the sentence that I have been bandying around. That I have been, that I have not. Articulated it.
And if there was anyone ever who was zealous for the God of Israel, that was Shmuel HaNavi, Samuel the prophet, whose birthday happens to be Yortzeit?
No, the anniversary of his passing, right? His Yortzeit is Chavchet Iyar, is the 28th of Iyar. No coincidence.
Which is Jerusalem Day.
On Jerusalem Day, the very day that we merited to unify, liberate Jerusalem. And 49 years ago, that is the day of the passing of Samuel the prophet. And Samuel the prophet, although he was pre the Holy Temple, pre the establishment of the first temple, although he was in the days of David, he anointed David. He represents integrity. He is equal of Moses and Aaron, the verse itself says. Mm-hmm. And he, after all, when Saul had his freak out, basically, when Saul had his insecurity and his moment, King Saul, when he had his, I'm not going to say his Rivlin type of thing, God forbid, but when King Saul, who the Torah itself criticizes as being of a mind, unfortunately, that he was either manipulated by the people or he didn't feel that he could go through with God's command. And he left Agag alive. Right. And that was a terrible, terrible disaster for the Jewish people. And Samuel the prophet did the most absolutely incorrect, politically incorrect thing that the High Court of Justice must have put an incredible price on his head, that the state comptroller, I don't know exactly how they would have dealt with what Samuel the prophet did when Agag was brought before him, and he took out his sword and he slayed him to pieces. He said, "This is exactly what God said to do, and you know it." Mm-hmm. And he is the prophet who symbolizes Jerusalem Day. In fact, the same day, by the way, the 20th of Iyar, which is the day of the wonderful celebrations with the flags in the streets for Jerusalem Day, that day we'll also see tens of thousands of visitors to the tomb of Samuel the prophet, which is about 3 minutes by car from my home. Mm-hmm.
And Samuel the prophet was also the man who castigated Israel when Israel got together and said, "Appoint for us a king so we can be like the other nations." And again, the idea that we like to be like the other nations that's the idea that's killing us, because we're not like the other nations. We weren't created to be a nation like the other nations. We were created to be a nation that established its encampment around the presence of God, and that's the nation of Israel then, and that's the nation of Israel today, and that's exactly what Samuel the prophet stood for, and fought for all his life. And you mentioned that he lived pre-temple times, but he and King David were integral in the planning for the building of the Holy Temple.
In fact, it was Samuel and David who established, through the clarity of prophecy and also through the Torah research, but the very night that David was fleeing from King Saul, he fled to Samuel, and that's when they actually established and clarified the sanctity of Mount Moriah for all generations as being the place that the ark would be brought to, as being the place that David would instruct his son Solomon to build the temple on.
And that David would gather the materials and dig the foundations.
And purchase the site
purchase
as well.
The area.
So
purchase
Samuel's
the area. Emphasize
vision,
that. Purchase the area.
Samuel's personality and his vision and his purpose are imprinted on the first temple as well.
So there's no Jerusalem day without Samuel the prophet. That's absolutely sure.
May I say one thing, Yitzchak, about this whole theme that we are developing here regarding the impotence of the secular leadership, the spiritual and moral bankruptcy of those who purport to be Zionists and have the dream of a Jewish state, but yet will excuse the enemy within from singing and happily about it, and who think that they could be loyal citizens, but yet they have a problem with the symbols of the state, who are considering the two-state solution. The whole idea of what we're trying to point out here, the disconnect that these people have from what the message is really all about. I want to remind you of something that we have mentioned in the past, but as a run-up to Shavuot, I think it's a very, very unique idea that bears repeating. Because basically what we're talking about, it was saying that there's a certain kind of place that we get to, which is an opportunity to rise and to really connect with our spiritual purpose, right? But it's a place where we're challenged to overcome our own vulnerability and inadequacy. And basically what you really have to do, Yitzchak, is you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that this is what you're supposed to be doing, right? There's a very, very remarkable idea that I think it actually capsulizes this whole notion, right? As is well known in Midrashic teaching, when Israel received the Torah at Mount Sinai, they stood at the foot of the mountain and they had the revelation of the presence of Hashem. There is a homiletic teaching. The sages tell us that God, as it were, uprooted the mountain and held it over their heads. Sounds like they were basically coerced into receiving the Torah, right? Because he said in this famous teaching that the Talmud says, it says that he held the mountain over their heads, and he said to them, if you will go through with this and receive the Torah, fine, good. But if not, this will be your burial place. Right. And it sounds like some kind of a threat, some kind of a mafia threat. It's a very, very elusive...
Nothing but the facts, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a very, very strange kind of teaching, right? And obviously it is a metaphor. Obviously one has to have the proper vessels, training, and insight to study this type of teaching, because the Torah does not engage in surreal or fantastic scenarios. The Torah is very, very real. Everything about the Torah is real. So let's not go there and try to interpret this as really having happened that way, that God actually held the mountain physically over their heads. Obviously, there's a message here, is what I'm trying to say. The rabbis are masters of psychology, and there's a deepest, 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 most profound lesson in every word that they say. So I notice in the Hebrew of the actual text in the Talmud. There's a very specific way that this is phrased. It says, if you receive it, mutav, right? That's good. But if not, sham tehe kfuratchem. There will be your burial place, right? And I always wondered for many, many years.
Where's there?
Huh?
Where's there?
It's improper, language-wise, because it should be here, because it's talking first person about the event as it was there. So it really should read, if you receive it, good. But if not, this will be your burial place right here. So what is it there? And my feeling is, this is my understanding of what this is all about, is that basically what Hashem is saying is, he's saying, you know what? If you receive my Torah, if you accept it, if you are willing to go the distance and you are willing to take a stand, and because receiving it doesn't just mean, I mean, this is not a frequent flyer club thing here. It's not like you're a platinum member. It's not like you got your perks here. It's a very, very, very big thing to say that you are going to receive the Torah, right? And that's our challenge, by the way, every year, to really, really receive it anew and totally commit ourselves, right? So basically Hashem is saying, you know what? If you receive it, that's going to be very good for you. But if not, if you listen in the deepest way, open up your heart, Yitzchak, I'll wait.
No, I'm listening now, Rabbi.
I'll wait while you open up your heart in the deepest way. What I'm trying to say is, but what he's saying is, if you're standing right there, at the foot of Mount Sinai, it's so close, you're ready to receive it, I brought you there after everything that you went through, all the travails, the upheavals of the exile and the Exodus, and now we came this far. You're standing right there, but yet you're not able to go through with it. And it might be in the smallest capacity. It might be that ostensibly, for all intents and purposes, the way, you know, oh, you received it, but there's some place deep inside that you're not ready to give yourself up to Hashem, as it were. You're not ready to go the distance, to take the plunge, to really walk the walk, and to really have this faith that you'll need in that particular place of your own failing, your own inadequacy, your own vulnerability, your own lack of the belief in the righteousness of your own cause. That place, Sham, that is your burial place. Yeah. You know what it is? It's your living grave. That you could be so, this is what you have to live with, that you could be so close, but that you are not really a free man. You are still a slave to Pharaoh, because you're not really, and I believe that this is really the message of our sages in this profound teaching, because physically he didn't hold a mountain over their heads. That's not what we believe in. This is not Aesop's fables. These are not wives' tales. The Torah is profound and life-changing, and every lesson is real. But what they're saying is that Hashem said to them, you need to go through with this, because wherever you don't, you are going to be held back, and that is worse than death. That's your living death. And you know what? It's like, honest to God, I'm sorry to say this, but talking about all the things that we're talking about these mixed messages, talking about this ambivalence, these mixed messages that are coming forth from these leaders who don't know right from left and right from wrong, and who are at the one hand talking about dedication and sacrifice and the Zionist ideal and the state of Israel, on the other hand are willing to talk about a two-state solution and willing to consider cavorting with the sworn enemy of Israel and all this stuff. You know what? This is exactly what this nightmare vision is all about. Either we are Jews who go forth into the light of day, embracing the Torah, and telling the world, this is where we are, this is ours, this is our responsibility, have a nice day. Or don't have a nice day. But I've had enough with you. This is what we have to do. I didn't ask you to like it. Or we have to say, oh, please, like us, help us, support us. We need you. We'll do whatever you say. And Shaked, I believe, said, oh, don't worry, we'll keep our eye on Lieberman, we in the Jewish home. But he only said that about how he's in favor of two states because he said that for the benefit of the world. No, I think he said that because that's who he is. I think that unless a person is completely, firmly rooted in a commitment to Hashem Yitbarach, to God, then this is what you're going to see.
you
And
love
the same thing with
somebody,
Netanyahu.
love them all the way. Rabbi, before we conclude, and we only have a minute left, I'd just like to mention to everybody that you will be speaking in the second half of June. In just a few weeks from now, you'll be speaking in Minnesota and in Texas. I'm just going to quickly read the dates and venues. And the information is on our website, and the information is on our Facebook page, posted each day. Here it is, Tuesday, June 21st, and Wednesday, June 22nd. You'll be speaking. The rabbi will be speaking at Spiritual Life in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. On the 26th, the rabbi will be speaking at the South Plains Hebraic Center in Lubbock, Texas. On the 28th, the rabbi will be speaking in Abilene, Texas. On the 29th and 30th, the rabbi will be speaking in East Humboldt, Texas. All the information, the contact information, etc., is on the website and on the Facebook page. Take advantage of that great opportunity to hear the rabbi and Rena Richman this coming month, the second half of June. Thanks for being with us. Temple Talk.